All right, welcome back. So we're going to head back to the top timeline here, which again is essentially representative of the future 7-year tribulation period, November 2nd of 2029 to November 2nd of 2036. And in this part, we're going to be taking a look at one NBA series between the Chicago Bulls and the Washington Wizards to see how the series is in alignment with each one of these dates. And again, the man with the relationship with these two jurisdictions is Mr. Obama. So we're going to start with the center point of the tribulation period, which is the date centered around the mark of the beast described in the Bible. How do I know that? Because it's been communicated to us. Now, in the top box, you have the entire text of Revelation, and I just want to go over this real quick again because it's important. The entire text of the book of Revelation in the New International Version in simple English gematria equals 532,033, as you see here in front of you, like the date May 3rd of 2033. In the box below, you have the verse Daniel chapter 7 verse 23. And when you decode that verse, you get a value of 706. The 706 prime number is 5,333. Also, like the date May 3rd of 2033, and how you would write it here in America. Now, in the series between the Bulls and the Wizards, they had their 68th all-time head-to-head game on November 22nd of 1980. And in this, after the game on this day, the all-time series is getting to 33 and 35. And from that date, November 22nd of 1980 to 5/3/2033 is 52 years, 163 days. And the 5,333rd prime number, like the date, is 52,163, like the date connection. So I just want you to think about that. This series in their 68th all-time game, it could have been 32 to 36. It could have been whatever. It could have been 40 to 28. But they landed at 33 to 35 on the one day that has a 5,333 connection to May 3rd of 2033, like what the text equals. Now, in the timeline, I have the date centered around the second beast of Revelation, quote unquote, coming out of earth during the tribulation period. And that date is January 9th of 2030. And in the text of verses 11 through 17 in chapter 13 of Revelation, you get a value of 9,130, which some people would read like a date, January 9th, 2030. Now, in the Bulls versus the Wizards series, in their 193rd game, their record on that day, February 22nd of 2010, is getting to 103 and 90, which is kind of like the number of games they've played. And again, the text equals 9130 verses 11 through 17 in chapter 13 of Revelation. And from that date, February 22nd of 2010 to January 9th of 2030, the date centered around the second beast of Revelation, you have a time span of 19 years, 321 days. It has a square root, 19,321 of 139, which is kind of like the record in the text of the verses. So the record is 103 to 90. You just remove the zeros because it doesn't mean anything, and you have a value of 139, just like in the text. Now, this series began, it's important to note that this series began on November 2nd, 112, just like the timeline starts and ends on. But in the first one here, to show you how it's in alignment with the beginning of tribulation, is that what's symbolic here is the number 483. So in their 78th all-time head-to-head game, they're getting to 38 and 40. If you read numbers like a language here, you see an important number, and that's 483. The reason why that's important is because, in accordance with biblical prophecy, there's already been 483 years of tribulation fulfilled with the remaining 7 years. And from this date, which is April 9th of 1982, to the beginning of the tribulation period, November 2nd of 2029, you have a span of 3 weeks, 4 days, and 570 months. And I know that's a shuffle of the timelines, but it's just as important. So you have a value of 3,457 in the date connection. And the 483rd prime, like what you see in the record, is 3,457. And why is that symbolic? It's because that date connection arrives at the date November 2nd of 2029, and it's symbolic because that's the date where we proceed to finish out the remaining 7 years to bring us to 490. And the last date in the timeline is the dates of November 2nd and November 3rd of 2036. Now, this is really interesting because I said the series started on November 2nd of 1966. And from that date to November 2nd of 2036, the end of the tribulation period, you have a span of 70 years. And again, that's very symbolic because on that date we will have completed the 70 weeks of prophecy. Okay, we've fulfilled 483 years and 69 weeks. Now, in this game, on March 19th of 1992, they're playing their 128th all-time game, and they get to 64 and 64. And the reason why that's important is because Mr. Obama holds that value in full reduction in his name. However, the 64th prime is 311, like a lot of people would write the date 11/3. And the 311th prime number is 2063. So in that path of numbers, you read a shuffle of the date November 3rd of 2036. So that's why the number 64 is somewhat unique, because it brings us, that, like I said, that path of numbers brings us right to the date in the timeline. And on this day, they're getting to 64 and 64. And from that date on March 19th of 92 to 11/3 of 2036, you have a span of 16,300 days, as you see here below in the highlighted timeline. And again, in numerology, the zero doesn't mean anything. So what you have here is them both getting to their 64th win on this day. And there's the date connection to November 3rd of 2036 is the other value and the other most important cipher for Mr. Obama's name. So that caps off this one. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.